6:30. Let's call the February 15th Planning and Zoning Commission to order. I'll start with a roll call. Brooks.
Here.
Mike. Brian.
Present.
Thomas.
Here.
Alyssa.
Here.
Rob.
Here.
We have a quorum. Item number 3. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, approval of minutes of the February 1st, 2024 regular meeting.
I'd like to make a change. At the very end of that page 3, where it says discussion held, the second sentence where it says no action taken was taken at this time. Good catch. That first taken should be taken out of there. Good catch.
Got it?
Could we have you speak that to the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Melissa, for sure.
I just asked that the two takens in one sentence, the first one be taken out in the minutes.
Perfect. Okay.
Oh, and with that done, I make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion is second to approve the amended minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, public comments. Anybody wishing to address the commission may do so now. Come on up. Can you just give us, if we could just give you your name and address for the record, that would be wonderful.
It's Wade Mossett, 26220 South McCarty Road.
Okay.
So I just wanted to stop in and give you an update. I put last time we talked about, the zoning and stuff. And so I've gone to the county
Yep.
and put in the application for a permit.
Yep.
For a farm experience agritourism permit.
Yes.
And they have, it's like 15 days to get back to me now.
Okay.
So either, if they approve it, then it's good.
Good.
If not, then I'll have to go in front of the county planning committee and board. But it looked favorable because it looks like we're an agritourism business and that's what it calls out. So
Sweet.
looks good. So I will,
Boy, that would make things so much better.
yes, for everybody.
Okay.
So I'll be back, hopefully be on the agenda the next meeting and hopefully I'll have a answer what their decision was.
Thank you.
Okay? All right.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
That's great.
Anybody else? Okay, item number 6. Rezone application for 400 North Chestnut Boulevard. Patrick or Tammy?
So this is Chestnut Ridge. This is the development on the east side of town, north of the school. It recently annexed. It is not the entirety of it. It is what is the yellow box here, this area. They are looking to rezone this to R3, this piece, R2, and this would be NRC, and that's the sewer line drainage way. So that is their proposal, and that matches up with what they had on the preliminary plans and the concept plans.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the staff here? No? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve, or make a recommendation to recommend approval to the city council.
Brian? Second by Alyssa. To recommend to city council to rezone. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, rezone application for 2501 East Augusta Street. Go ahead, Patrick.
So this is Sunrise Park. A little while ago, you all dealt with Tallgrass Park, and before that, a couple parcels of Aspen Park and City Hall, and This is the city's continuing efforts to have all its properties zoned institutional. And this time, Sunrise Park has its turn.
Perfect. Anybody got any questions on this? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I would like to move to approve that application.
Second.
Motion is second to recommend to city council the rezone application for 2501 East Augusta Street. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, preliminary plans for River Park addition. So we have a name now. You just come up and give your name and address for the record, please. That would be awesome.
Brian Jackson, Development Manager with the Musker Companies over in Sioux Falls. And I guess I'll just
Yes,
answer
sir.
any questions you would have.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about this? This pretty much matches up, I think, with the concept plan that we saw earlier.
Yes.
It does have a couple of spots of institutional zone. The one spot, some of you may have heard, but that's where there's a barn located, so we're working it out. Let's put it that way. Which one?
Is the barn, is
Yes.
that tract 11
Yes.
on the right? Yeah.
Yes.
What page is that right there, Patrick?
This is page 46.
Yeah, so if you go to page 46 of your packet, you'll see the zoning map with all the highlighted zones. The other green patch, I believe, is a continuation of the already drainage area, right? Yes.
So if you want to see the barn, it is the image on the screen. It is right here.
I mean, yeah. Do you have any questions? Anybody have any questions or comments? Go ahead and use your microphone, please. Thank you.
So I'm not sure how much say we have in this, but just a couple concerns that I got. Lots of pages here, sorry. Trying to find exactly what tracks to refer to. It's in that southeast corner with the, I'm assuming it's a, electrical easement that goes through there diagonally.
Yeah, I think actually an electrical easement. I think there's a sanitary sewer easement too.
Yeah, so it looks like block 7, lots 14, 19, 8, and especially 9. I'm just concerned about the buildable area on those, if that's... Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So, especially up there on block 9, the buildable area, by the time we put setbacks in there.
Yeah, they're definitely difficult lots, especially with that one. I don't have a specific answer for you right at this point in time regarding that one. As I don't know as a lot, it meets the requirements for the zoning. It would definitely have to be, in my mind, something of a 2-story type to just work within there. They can build up to that easement, that drainage easement on the north side in the green, so they can build up to that specific line, so that takes care of a side yard easement. And then they can build right up to that red line, as long as there's no structure within that area. So I don't know. I would imagine somebody, and I defer to a builder, would build more along that west property line where it probably comes down. I can't see it that well, but you had 100 feet or so, I bet.
Yeah, because, obviously there's side yard easements, there's front yard setback, side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks. I just don't know if there's anything buildable in that lot 9.
Well, I mean, you got 77 feet at the curve that goes from property line to property line, and then you take was at 10 feet of that easement, maybe 20. So you're at 57, and then you take 7 feet for the side yard. And actually, this is R2, so it could be 5 foot. So you're down to what, a 55 to 60 foot wide house plan depth.
Front to back.
Yeah, front to back, but on that west property line, the whole property line itself is 210 feet deep. So you could have a structure or a home that would be pushed more to the west.
The depth of that from the front property line to the setback.
I don't know exactly, no.
The reason I bring it up is we're getting a lot of people coming here and complaining about buildable area and I want to expand and, somebody's gonna go in here, buy this property and think, hey, I got a great piece of property here, but then they find out they can't build on it. So then they're gonna be coming to us and wanting a variance and saying, this isn't, I don't have the same
I think-
rights as my neighbor does.
Sure,
and-
valid concern. What I would say there is what's going to govern what you can and can't say on this one is that power line easement, whether that's Sioux Valley Energy or WAPA. They're the ones that have the easement and restrict what can and can't be built under their power line easement. So it's all upfront conversation with anybody who's looking to purchase that property is that this is your buildable area based on the easements, and then once they would submit a plan to the city for a building permit, that they would also look at whatever they could build on that. So it's not perfect. It might be a piece of property that we sit on for a long time. You're just going to have to find the right person to go and get it and get in there. But if somebody will be creative and build what they need to build to get a property that has all that open space and backing up to the park. It might be the deal of the century. It just might be priced. It might be priced because of what the buildable area may or may not be. But as it sits now, I don't know specifically what the square footage would be.
Tammy or Patrick, could you pull up page? Can't tell what page it is here in our packet. The one that has the proposed zones.
It's 46.
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah, my concern is, since we instituted the new setbacks for R2, we're starting to see a lot more requests for R2. And I understand a need for it, but I'm a little bit concerned with zoning everything R2 in this. There was a reason for the R2, and that was to allow for smaller parcels, smaller houses. But I don't think the intent was for larger lots, and then let's go ahead and zone them R2 so that we can have a smaller setback. So what I don't want to see is these larger parcels and zoned R2 so that, hey, we can allow these people to have 5-foot setbacks instead of 7-foot setbacks. So I'm really concerned when I see this preliminary plan because everything's R2, which means a much higher density. That wasn't the intent of allowing R2s. The intent of R2s was smaller houses, smaller parcels, but I see a lot of large parcels which really are R1 parcels, especially up along the park, but I don't want to see everybody with 5-foot setbacks. So
Right.
I'm really concerned with the amount of R2 in this versus what really should be R1s.
I think the 5-foot setback with where that comes with the R2 is for a specific type, like when we originally talked about up in Stone Ridge and backing up the interstate with that. The other intent with the R2 zoning was if you zoned this all R1, we'd have a minimum lot width of 80 feet. And that didn't work. So a majority of what you're seeing there, anything south of Creekside, is generally 65 feet to 78 is what we're looking for in the lot size. So to come in and require and have 80-foot lot widths just didn't work with the plan because you're correct. You're creating some less density with it, but we're not creating the density in which you're talking. That's where we've structured in the lots that are backing up to that long parcel tract 9, I think it is, where you'll have some more medium density. Then we have those 50-foot wide lots that are on that street there, which Sweetwater, I believe, is what it's called. And then we have specific 65-foot lots that are on the north side of Creekside. And then everything else down there just doesn't qualify for R1 zoning because we couldn't get the 80-foot lot widths to work out.
It isn't, rather than going by street name, if we go to, I can't get the page numbers to show up here.
At the top of your page.
Zone 1B, 6B, 5B, everything south of that appears to be lot sizes which would accommodate R1.
Right, yeah, and then that was basically what we came through with this one, and we haven't done the zoning yet. This is proposed. So most likely, right, when we come through,
Let me back up.
Okay.
Before you continue.
okay,
So we were previously chastised for approving a preliminary plat with proposed zoning, and that we couldn't change it after the fact. So I don't wanna accept this based on your proposed zoning.
I guess my first response would be, is it qualifies for R2 zoning, so, and to go to R1 is actually a down zone for less density, so it'd be an improvement versus approving it for a low density and going to a higher density.
But that's my point.
Right.
is I don't wanna see all of Brandon zoned R2, just because that's the minimum zoning that's allowed. That allows larger houses to be built closer to property lines, and that's not the intent of why we created a reduced setback on R2. And I believe you were the one that
Yep.
requested this.
I was.
So we made an exception, we revised our ordinance for specific cases in R2, but the intent isn't to allow everything to be zoned R2.
In this case, this is what the zoning qualify for, is going for R2 because the majority of the lots are not meeting the 80-foot lot minimum requirement for the width.
But those lots south of what I just described are wide enough to accommodate R1.
Most of them, yeah. I would say yes. Especially the ones that would back up to the green NRC where the creek would be. I don't know about specifically the ones on the other side there, and I don't have the page with the phasing, but majority of those, yeah.
What latitude do we have? I'm concerned, I'm starting to see a lot of developers coming in and wanting R2s. And I don't think that's the intent of our reduction in R2, that, well, it meets R2, or let's go R3 because it meets that as an absolute minimum. I don't think that was the intent when we reduced the setbacks in R2. What I don't wanna see is everybody taking advantage of that, and, okay, we're gonna build these giant houses 5 foot off the setback instead of 7 foot off the setback. It's good, my concern is the density of housing that's gonna go there. So I guess, what latitude do we have to say, no, we don't want R2 here, we want R1 here?
Our subdivision ordinance requires you all to approve the preliminary plans. You can
Right.
choose
I
to,
understand that, but we also have to approve what we got chastised previously because we had approved a preliminary plan with some zoning on it. And we couldn't go back and say, no, we don't want this R1 or R2. So we have to address that issue now. My concern, I don't like the density of all of this being R2.
Okay,
I'd like to see a better split of R1s, R2s, and some R3s. I don't wanna see Brandon going to all R2s because, well, it meets the minimum.
You have an
Okay.
approved zone and it meets the requirements and it's all single-family housing. So regardless, and it's also the minimum. I mean, nobody says that they have to build from side yard setback to side yard setback. That's all determined by who purchases the property and what home plan they have.
but in our experience, they will.
We can determine the density. That's my point. So,
Does any-
I'm okay with allowing some areas to be R2s, but I don't want the entire city to be R2s and everybody building 5 foot off the property line. That's what I'm saying, okay?
Okay, does
hear you.
anybody else have any comments on this? Anybody else at the table?
How many properties would you say qualified for R1?
Just a reminder to use your mics, please, so that the camera can pick us up. Thank you.
As I said, it basically, it'd be anything south, you know, I don't have the references that Brian was talking there too, but Creekside is the one street, the main one that goes all the way through east to west on there. Probably anything on that street that goes and backs up to the NRC. I don't know that some of the cul-de-sac lots are, less than half, I guess. Off the cuff, I didn't look or count.
Patrick, if you could pull up page 57, I think that's the one that Brian was looking at. That's got the different zones on it. And Brian, what you're saying is everything that would be south of like the 4C, 4B, 4A.
Basically, that line between 3C, 3B, 3A, 4C, 4B, 4A,
Yep,
from what I saw,
everything's south of there.
meets the lot size for R1.
Yeah.
But yet,
Everything,
probably 60 to 70% of what they're asking is R2, which to me is too high a density.
so
I'd
you
like
would,
to see a better mix.
1B,
of high, low, and medium.
6C, 5B, 5A, 6A, 6B up on that map up there. You would like to see those R1 instead of R2.
So, yeah, there's just, so when I go to the page with the colors in it, my pages don't show up on here.
Yeah.
The
So-
one with the green, yellow,
Yep, yeah,
blue.
yes. And so the yellow stops on this map, I think at what, 8? Patrick, you can
Goes
help
all
me
the
out a
way
little
down
bit.
to 8. The only area that is R1 is that southwest corner.
10A, 10B, 9B, 9A, and 10C.
Yeah.
That's our R1.
So I think if you look up at our comprehensive plan, it talks about the amount of density, and I think this exceeds the density in our comprehensive plan.
I can't speak to your comprehensive plan. I know that that's what we've been working on. The majority of the R2 stuff has been worked out to where we have a builder that's committed to purchasing and building workforce housing type things. So we're trying to meet the need of what we're hearing talking about when we come to meetings like this is, we need workforce housing, we need more affordable housing. The only way you're going to get that is to have lots that are not 80 feet wide. We felt this was a good intermediate way to transition from lots that are 50 feet wide to 65 feet wide to 70 some feet wide, and some that might be more than the 80 feet wide. The zoning still allows them, regardless whether they're R1 or R2, to still build single-family homes, whether or not they build within, if it's a 100-foot wide lot and they build within 5 feet of the property lines, or if it's a 60-foot lot within the 5 yard, that's still the minimum. That's up to each consumer who would build a house.
I understand what
Yep.
you're saying, but it's also our responsibility to maintain the density of housing in town and not allow it up to the individual.
Yeah, it's a great balance to try and figure out as far as the density of housing that you want, but also meet the demands of the community where they want workforce housing and things that are more affordable.
So I do agree with Brian in that I don't think the intent of creating as R2 zone with smaller setbacks was to allow for bigger houses on bigger lots. We've done this in other parts of the town, and they're not building workforce housing on R2 developments. I don't know. What does anybody else think about this? If you have questions or comments, this would be the opportunity during the preliminary plan. This is kind of what we do these for.
I'd have to agree with Brian on this, Heidelbrink, that with there is a lot of R2 in this. And I've looked through all the new development put in town. Most of them are R2. I'm looking at south of here on Sioux, that's all R2. So, I mean, you're getting a lot of it, and I know why they're doing it, it's because everyone always maximizes everything. It's cost, everything. Developer,
Can we get your microphone wrap?
it's on, or it wasn't on. I don't know. It's a trickle down theory, I look at it as. You gotta give the builder, it's just trickle down to the consumer.
Right.
And it starts at the development or purchasing of the lot or the property. And it doesn't seem to trickle down ever. it stops. To me, it does. And I can't speak, but I can. R2, it doesn't seem like it helps it because stuff's still expensive for workforce housing.
Right. And yeah,
You can't say it's gonna, does it cheapen it up? No one knows.
Sure.
Really.
I agree. And I guess let me clarify for that. Sorry.
Because it's everything, from what I'm seeing with pricing of everything, it's still going up. It's not stopping.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we try to minimize as much as possible. People still want more all the time in these houses. You try to say, hey, cut here, cut there. They still go, what, I want this, I want that. Okay, you can have it, but you got to pay.
Mhm.
It doesn't, I mean,
Oh, I know that.
I know you don't have a say on that, but it's just,
Right.
I see that aspect of it too. The consumer always wants more. It's just, it's the nature of everybody.
Right. Thank you, Rob. That was good. Good point out. Let me clarify on the on the workforce housing north of Creekside is what I was meaning with the actual smaller lots. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. But I totally agree when I talk to people, and you in the building industry know, I mean, I'm just a piece. I mean, I'm like some of you go buy windows. Is you could buy the windows at Menards, or you can buy the Anderson expensive windows, or Pella, or whatever you want. It's up to the consumer. So what we're trying to do is when we create this stuff, we're creating smaller lots to try and reduce price. You know, is there a win-win? Yeah, there's got to be a balance with it all. But you know, you make a great point. It's up to the consumer, and I can only do so much of my part of the whole process.
Well, and I know what happens with every builder or every homeowner. They build as big as they can on that lot. They don't, oh, I got 5 feet, I'll just leave it off. No, 5 feet's good enough. Let's go another 5 feet. It's at that point in time, it costs nothing at 5 feet compared to 10 years down the road. It's going to cost you a lot more to do it. I mean,
This is something that has been going on in Brandon for a long time. We used to have big lots with small houses. We used to use something called a lot coverage rule, and we got rid of that because we had a developer come in and basically want to put bigger houses and on smaller lots. So then we set setbacks and said, these are the setbacks, and you can build inside of them. We won't question the size of the lot, but you have to stay inside the setbacks. So, I mean, it is our job to make sure we look for those continuities in developments, especially when it comes to things like R1 and R2, when we start looking at setbacks. I don't want to see the entire town go to R2 with 5-foot setbacks, because I don't think that that is the intent of what we were doing when we created those. I mean, those were for villa homes, those were for smaller homes, those were for allow smaller lots with not only workforce housing, but retirement housing. You know, it goes both ways. So I don't know. Does anybody have any recommendations? Anything they would like to see?
This doesn't have to do with this preliminary plan necessarily, but thinking back to this discussion on the R2 when this setback was changed, which I was part of that discussion, and I think I still agree with the idea that we talked about at that time, which was these slab on grade type homes in the narrower lots. So in retrospect, it makes me wonder if we should have at that time talked about, maybe we did and I don't remember it, but talked about allowing the 5-foot. I also don't want to make things so complicated that they're difficult, but allowing the 5-foot on up to a certain width of the lot and falling back to the 7-foot on the rest. So like now in retrospect, wish I would have thought of that at the time, because I agree. I'm concerned about 5-foot setbacks on those larger lots. I'm still okay with the 5-foot setback on those certain types of narrow lots with the slab on grade type houses, which I think sell and people do want.
Does staff have any comments on this?
Just a clarification question. So if you made these lots smaller, then the board would be okay with the percentage of R2, or we're not looking at that much R2? You want to see it as zoned as R1?
I'm trying to pull up the comp plan right now, but if I remember correctly, there was a target.
I can't find that in the comp plan. I was looking for that too.
Yeah.
There's just a target for residential. It's not broken down by R1, R2, R3.
But yeah, I mean, that would be the history and the But here again, I don't think we want the entire city of Brandon to be zoned R2. That wasn't the intent of the change of what we did in the R2 districts with the reduced setbacks. That wasn't the intent to make the entire city R2 to allow everybody to build within 5 feet. It was to allow for some certain situations. What I don't think the intent, and I can't speak for everybody on this board, but I don't think the intent was, well, let's just zone everything in Brandon new as R2 to give everybody the greatest opportunity to maximize their lots. I do know when, is it Sunrise Estates? The one over across from the golf course, I don't remember the name of that. Somebody did come in and say that this doesn't meet the comp plan because of the density in the comp plan. So that's what I'm trying to find here.
Okay.
I just want to point out, Tim, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm not opposed to the R1 on those lots, like I said. So, I mean, as far as a recommendation, I'm not here to try and tell you what to do or throw anything out there, but is if you wanted to go ahead so we keep moving forward this and then make it a conditional approval that you approve this with R1 zoning going for that specific area. I mean, I'm not opposed to that. Like I said, the reason is it was easy to put on the map and wanted to make sure that we didn't have a lot that was in there that was going to be under 80 feet deep or 80 foot wide. So our intent on this was not to have the 5 foot side yards. The intent was there's going to be a lot width that was under, but I can see where the concern is. I'm glad you brought it up because actually I didn't even think about that. I was just more worried about the width, but just want to throw that out there.
Well, I know that if we allow, some of these lots that are south of Creekside are 95 feet, 110 feet. And some of those lots, if we allow 5 foot setbacks, they'll build to the 5 foot setback, even on a 110 foot wide lot.
Yes and no. I mean, it could happen. Yeah. A lot of times when you have people that are buying lots, they're, might be priced in, let's say the Bluffs, for example, is they're looking for privacy. So they're usually looking for larger lots and they're not building on the whole thing. They're going to be looking for, they're the no backyard neighbor type of people and they're looking for some side yard stuff too. But yeah, it is a possibility.
I think I would be happier if all the lots on here that qualified for R1 were colored in that way, instead of the whole thing being R2. You said you could do that?
Well, what my recommendation is, because I'd like to see this keep moving forward, I'm not opposed to that. And as I had explained, is that we haven't zoned these yet. So I would come back if you wanted to make it a conditional approval or however you would like to do it, that when I do the zoning paperwork with Patrick, is that we would come back and zone those as R1. That was going to be our intent anyway, now that we're into it. But as it sits right now, because if we don't go to this now, your next meeting's not until March. And we got a lot of
So, Tammy,
cogs in the wheel.
how do we avoid not getting in the same situation we were a few months ago when we approved a preliminary plan and then we're questioning the zoning districts? When the preliminary plan shown zones,
Yeah, approval with conditions. I don't know if you wanna say everything south of a certain road needs to be zoned R1.
does anybody have any thoughts on that?
It's hard for us to, tell the developer, this needs to be R1, this needs to be R2, this needs to be general business. But I guess, do you understand where we're coming from?
I totally do. And like I said, and honestly, I was looking at the lot widths and I totally forgot about the side yards when it came down to it. So, and that's why I want to say to keep moving things forward. And I want to work with you on that. And I agree with rezoning it. And that was, like you said, going to be intent. And I understand because I've been in your meetings and watched you participate in all that fun conversation where, like you said, if you did a conditional approval that you would leave Tammy and Patrick to enforce when I come back. And obviously they're here and I try and make sure I do what I promised to do, but even identifying it by the specific phases up there. So if you did, 1B, 1C, as there anything that's there, identify those as being R1 when we come back to zone. I think that would help better identify the properties or the lots that you would like to see that specific zoning. And that's, honestly, that was probably what we were going to talk to them about, is coming back to an R1 zoning on that. But when we started, it was different, and the plan has morphed so much. And honestly, I think we just got to this point and forgot about it.
Sure.
So I guess, hearing that, I guess I'd like to hear from you what you would suggest
Right.
for the change of R2 to R1.
Right.
Rather than us telling you where to delineate that line. I mean, you know the grades, you know the costs associated with developing each individual lot.
Yeah.
So where would you like to maybe see that line change to?
Right. So just basically the same lines that we've all been talking about. So if I standing here right now, as we look at this, 1B, 6C, 5B, 5A, 6A, and 6B, would be the change. Those lots, I would believe, majority of them, I would think, are wide enough. I'm just strictly going by lot width, because I want to make sure that, just to get to that 80-foot, and that's a fun conversation we'd have, getting some flexibility with the lot width on R1 would be great. Unintended consequence of this is where we're at now, I guess. But I would say if we named off those 6, or in lot 8, or in section 8, yeah.
Include 8, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those will all be big enough. The biggest thing we'd run into in the cul-de-sacs, I just like to point out, is that you have a certain, and would probably defer to Patrick on that one. What's the minimum curb length for a R1 versus R2 in a cul-de-sac? Do you know that off the top of your head? Okay. 55 feet or something like that reminds me, and I think it's down to 50 or something like that. And that's just at the curb, so it could be this narrow, big enough for a driveway, and I think we talked about this before.
Yep.
But it could really widen out once you got past there. So that's the only concern would be is, we already have that concern with that lot 9, and if we have to, with the easements going through there and what's buildable, is that we just have to come back and rework it. And there's nothing saying that when we got to the DEP phase that we wouldn't look at this closer and say, yep, that conversation's right, it's not buildable. But right now our focus is everything up by Holly Boulevard, because that's where, if that doesn't happen, the rest of this isn't going to happen anytime soon. So, yeah, but if you would name those 7, because anything in the 10s and 9s is all going to be R1 anyway, I believe.
I guess I'm okay with what he's saying. Could you explain a little bit what's happening there in area 8, where your road is going across the drainage way? What are you proposing there for?
Right.
Easement, or sorry, not easements, but drainage?
Yep.
What happens?
So
if
yeah,
the
that's been a
drainage
good question.
overflows?
Great question. I'll defer to Tammy a little bit.
Thing?
Yeah, well, no, it's been a great focal point, and it's been something that we've been working, our engineers and Tammy have been talking with regarding that. It would probably be a bridge of some sort or something with some oversized culverts. They've done studies that will probably come out in the engineering plans or the storm drain plan, where if that were to ever get clogged up, how far back up would it go? And so we made sure that we drew the property lines like in 6B and 6A, that so it would be, the property lines are higher than the elevation where the water would back up into. So yeah, like we've been working with Tammy on that one. So it would be some kind of either oversized culvert structure, and I would defer to the specifics to her on that, but it would be large enough to ensure that water would still flow. And in the case that if it would ever back up, the top over point on the road to continue down the drainage easement would not affect the property lines. And we keep it within that drainage tract that the city would take over. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Hold on a second. We're discussing, it looks like.
Take your time. I'm here all night.
Sorry, just, it's a big area.
No, I appreciate the questions. And honestly, like I said, unintended consequence, because for what we were doing, I was specifically looking at anything less than 80 feet wide. That's on all I was looking at.
Okay. Yes, Tammy.
So we are having a discussion. If they want to move it forward, the obvious problem comes, city council is set to hear these preliminary plans on Tuesday.
Yep.
If you all want to, you all have the option of redraw it and get back to us in March. That is an option. If you wanted to move it forward, we would need specific directions on what you want to have R1 versus not, because we would need somehow the image to be altered rather than just some vague direction if it's 80 feet wide versus if it's,
So if you
it
look
would
at,
not work. We would need specifics.
if you look at the map behind you.
Yep.
On the board, basically, the ones that he named, 1B, 6C, 5B, 6B, 6A, 5A, and 8. We would like to see those turned into R1 versus R2.
Yes. And
Yes.
if you, just for time sakes for the audience, if you wanted to table this for a little bit and let me work on this, and then I could come back up for you to make an action item, would that be a okay recommendation, just so these folks don't have to watch me draw on the paper?
Sure.
I just want to be.
Sure. Yeah, we can table.
Okay.
We only have one more item after you.
Oh,
so
do you? Okay, I'll draw
Right,
fast.
quick.
You have a great
Yes.
audience tonight. So
Do,
for that.
do we need a motion to table something, or can I just do that? Okay, I just did it.
Yep.
Okay, I'll
tabling
come back
it.
up.
We'll move on to item number 9. This is a discussion item for home occupations for gardens. Shoot, Patrick.
So we have a property owner here that was looking to put a home garden on his property. We had talked about this last time during public comments. The way we kind of worked it out is ag, you have a memo from last time in your folder as well. Ag is very broad. It doesn't care whether you eat it, whether you sell it, whether you donate it. It's ag if you're growing crops, and that's a principal land use. This is R1. So ag is only allowed in NRC, so there's a problem there. So then you go to home occupation. If it's a garden, if he sells or transacts or does some kind of transaction, is that a business? So then if it's a business, it's a home occupation. A home occupation has to be smaller than the principal structure. So the garden would be smaller than the principal structure. This is a proposed amendment that would just allow a garden operating as part of a home occupation to be larger than the footprint of the lot's principal structure. The goal here is to avoid the whole rezone deal or try to find a workable solution, but we're up to your thoughts whether you want it to be as broad as maybe larger than, if you want to put some kind of cap to be 3 times the size of, or however you want to do it. This is just kind of a first stab to try to, if that sounds like a reasonable solution that we want people to have home gardens, we'll work from there and try to figure out a solution.
It looks good to me. Anybody else have any questions for Patrick? Go ahead.
So if, the way this is written here, does that affect if they sell it? Like if at my house, I'm not gonna sell it, but I wanted to put the whole backyard into a garden, would I need a home occupation for that, or
If you
only
weren't
if I
going to
try to
sell
sell it?
or take money, you would not be regulated by this. You would just be able to have your garden of any size. It would just be something not regulated.
Okay, so,
But we can have a garden of any size currently, correct?
Depending on what you want to do with it.
I mean, right. But if I just wanted to grow it, can it, and eat it, I
Yes.
can turn my whole
We would
yard
not
into a garden.
so this,
The issue becomes when it's money is exchanged hands.
Right.
This
It
is
becomes a
just if
business.
it's related to a home sorry. This is only related to if it's a home occupied, home occupation / business.
Yes, the garden is a business or
So if you're
money
not
somehow transacts.
Selling anything, it doesn't matter. You can have your entire yard as a garden.
Correct.
But
It
our
just becomes
ordinance,
murky when it becomes
says a home occupation business has to be less than the footprint of the principal structure.
Correct.
Yes, which depending on the size of your
Okay.
house, that could be a small garden.
Which is why this clarifies just a garden operating. This does not make
do we have a definition of garden? Do we need a definition of garden?
we define everything.
So the default, if there is no definition, is the standard dictionary definition. If you wanted to specifically define, we could an agricultural operation operating as part of a home occupation, if you'd like to carry over the definition. If you feel garden is sufficient, if we looked up the definition of garden in the dictionary.
Yeah, cause what was the other thing you said? Agricultural?
If we want, because we do define
Cause that
ag.
makes me think of animals.
Our definition does not include animals in the
Right,
zoning
okay,
ordinance.
yeah.
And we have in the municipal code restrictions on livestock and everything else.
Correct.
So where this could, I mean, when we look at these, we think, well, yeah, this is really simple and straightforward, but I remember about 6-8 months ago, we had an issue with a fence that got totally out of control. So where this could get out of control is somebody now plants their entire site into a garden. Front yard, side yards, rear yard, the entire property becomes a garden. Now, will it happen? Probably not. Can it happen? Yes.
But it could happen now.
But it could happen. Yes,
It could happen now, it's just as long as they don't sell it.
as long as they don't sell it. So,
And I don't think that
but
makes an
selling it
accommodation.
creates an incentive to make a bigger garden and a bigger and bigger, bigger. So I'm okay with this as long as we keep it to the rear yard. Thoughts?
Pretty sure that won't address the situation that we have in front of us. Because that won't be a rear yard. Come on up, sir. If you just give your name and address, that would be awesome. It appears that we're talking about you now.
Eric Paulson, 1600 East Aspen Boulevard, Brandon, South Dakota.
Yes, sir.
Just a statement on the backyard situation that would not work with my property because I'm actually, I'm right next to the retention pond that they put up.
Pond's here.
Yeah.
Is the lot 2 yours as well?
Yeah, both of those lots are mine.
These 2 right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And the section that I would like to plant is in the floodplain.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it would, it's hard to,
Yeah.
both lots are in the floodplain.
Yeah.
Pretty much the house, kitty corner to the second lot is maybe not in the floodplain.
Oh, I can see your house there.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
if
then
you
the
just
other,
stuck to your backyard, that would just be a little,
right,
yeah,
Correct.
yep, yeah.
Backyard is everything from the back side of the house, drawing a line all the, yes, thank you.
That still limits.
That's still not covering the area he wants, but
Ooh.
I can think of a situation in town right now that's kind of iffy in terms of what they're doing for gardening.
Yeah. I drove by one last summer. Again, do we have, if they're taking this stuff to a farmer's market and selling it, do we also limit that as a home occupation? Do we consider that a home occupation? Or does the sale have to occur at the house?
I think in the past, that distinction has not been made, because we did have the one person come in that wanted to do some ceramic work out of her
Yep.
building and then take it places, and that was looked at as a home occupation.
Yep. I also know that we're not going to come across very many other lots like this in the city of Brandon. And I'm not really sure if we allow for gardens that people are just going to all of a sudden till up their entire yard and plant corn. If they would have done that, they'd have stayed on the farm. Maybe they will. Okay.
The parcel I'm thinking about, they're pretty close to that, Tim.
Okay.
I don't see much difference between this kind of home occupation than somebody in their house doing artwork and then taking it to an art fair and selling 500 pictures. if they got them stacked up in their house. It's a garden. I've driven by that spot many times to get to my house. I have to do it tonight to get by my house. And, it's just grass right now with a couple big dogs running around in it, right? Yeah. I wouldn't mind if there was a garden there. It doesn't bother me.
Yep.
My biggest thing is that it's a floodplain. It can't be used for anything other than,
Yeah.
other than growing maybe.
Yep.
And no guarantee that it doesn't flood and take out my whole crop, you know?
I think we would all like to see you turn this into a garden. We're just trying to come up with the right language to make
Sure.
sure that we're covered with the rest of the city.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just don't want the neighbor to the north of you having a cornfield in his front yard. Oh, yeah.
To the north of me is, so that's
I'm
all.
being facetious.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Be on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind, as the ordinance stands right now, you can plant a garden as big as you want in your yard, right? This, amendment to the ordinance, it just concerns a home occupation. So my only concern is, like, pretend it's not you, could be anybody, right? So they might want to take take whatever they're not gonna use themselves, take it to a farmer's market and sell it there. They might want to put a table curbside and have people, come and get it, like a rummage sale. Or they might want to now build a building there so they could have, like, Cherry Rock Farms, only small, but, so it could get to the point where they wanna put basically a storefront on the front of, on that property. And then that would be, to me, it would be weird, concerning. I would be concerned about that.
That would go to accessory structures and things
Well,
then, 'cause
then,
wouldn't that
yeah,
be if
other
you had a
different
building?
ordinances would come into play
Yeah.
at that point, but,
I also think that tying this to a home occupation, that's another, all home occupations have to come before us and we can put conditions on those, I believe, if we were to pass one. So if another instance came up for a garden like this, I think there'd be an opportunity to discuss that and look at a property and say,
Agreed.
put some condition on it. So in the future.
okay.
That's a good point.
Agreed.
I forgot about that. Maybe home occupation has to come here.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want what we're talking about tonight to allow something we wouldn't foresee of.
It sounds like you're on the right track. One other thought, since we did talk about definitions of garden versus ag generally, is one way to limit it. Ag generally involves quite a bit of machinery, where a garden, you wouldn't probably be out there with a tractor right in the middle of town, is one way to limit a garden to being
Do you want to use a
not
tractor?
machine operated.
I would have to use a tractor.
I know.
But, we also have to think, gardening isn't just vegetables.
Nope.
Gardening might be selling flowers that are being.
I have one question for you.
Shoot.
The home occupation
Yes.
versus actually rezoning it to ag, can you explain that just a little bit to me? Like just me thinking out loud, ag seems like it would be a better fit for my property because in the definitions that they had given me for ag, since it's in a floodplain, that really restricts what could actually be built there if it was zoned as ag. Like there was specific things in there versus the home occupation.
So
Just thinking as a whole,
we chatted about this a little bit,
Okay.
Patrick. Can you walk him through the differences between an ag zoning and a home occupation in R1?
So A rezoning changes your lists of uses you are allowed to do there. You get a brand new list of things to do. A home occupation is a use that is allowed by a conditional use permit in conjunction with a place someone lives. So it would change, home occupation wouldn't change the uses necessarily. You would just be allowed to do things where you live. An ag designation would change the uses you're allowed to do.
This is, what we're trying to do is make this as easy as possible, and this is the easiest way possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's hard to downzone something surrounded by residential houses to something less regulated that is undeveloped land practically. It's hard to go backwards.
Okay.
Yes.
This gets complicated because technically a kid selling lemonade is a home occupation.
We know. We're not gonna go there. I don't know. No. This is also assuming that everybody who's running a home occupation has actually come in and gotten that.
Right.
It'd be harder for you because you're gonna be very visible. It's easy for an artist to do a home occupation business because nobody sees them, right? So,
So I have another question. So we're thinking a garden, okay, so maybe he'd be, and again, maybe not you specifically, but whoever, would be selling things in July, August, September, you know? But say the owner of the property spends lots of time canning, wants to continue selling things all throughout the year, having people coming in and up, you know, up his driveway, has a little display in the garage there or whatever, do we care about that?
that would all be handled in the home occupation permit that they would have to apply for. And those conditions could be worked out during that time period.
One part of a conditional use permit for a home occupation is that you have to explicitly allow retail sales on site. So that would be a consideration at that point.
And then also home occupation, there's things like signage, you're only allowed certain kind of signage. Like, so you can't, if I remember correctly, for home occupation, you can't put a big sign out at the curb. Has to be attached to your house. It can only be this big, you
A
know.
home occupation is designed to have your house blend into the neighborhood. It's to keep it more house than business.
The number of parking spaces you allow and stuff like that, all regulated. So just, you know, heads up.
Okay. So this is a discussion item, so have we discussed it? Are you good?
Where would you like it to go next?
I think it's good. I think it's good. So now our next move is to schedule a public hearing.
Yep, so that would, given the way the days fall, we're most likely probably at the second meeting in March, but
There
we
you
can
go.
confirm.
So then we'll do a second meeting on an ordinance change, and then it has to go first and second reading.
Yep, public hearing,
Yep.
that'll be your yay or
Yep.
nay recommendation or not, then city council for 2 readings and 20 days and all that fun stuff. So the process takes somewhere between 60 and 90 days, just because that's all state law lays out for them, so. It takes time.
Which
Like
then is
everything.
planting season. So there you go.
So thanks for coming in and doing it
All
the
right,
right
thank
way.
you.
Yeah.
The right way is usually the hard way.
It usually is, yes.
Does the language they talk about, does that work for you? Even though it's probably a little inconvenient, does it somewhat get you where you need to go, hopefully?
I guess I don't know for sure. Like, I probably have to sit down and talk with you a little bit more about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Just in my head, it seemed easier just to change it to ag, and then I didn't have to worry about all the other stuff. And for my property specifically, I can't do anything, even though it's zoned ag, there's like, you could put a park there and all that stuff, but there's a park across the street, and can't put a cemetery because it's in a flood zone. The flood zone knocks out all the other things that I could do with the ag other than just grow. So in my head, I thought ag would be easier, but I'm open to whatever you guys recommend just to
Well,
allow me to grow.
we're gonna go ahead and try to change the ordinance, and I'll let you sit down with Patrick and figure out what works best for you.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Sounds great
The
to me.
unique thing about your property is that it is, as far as we know, currently two pieces of property.
It is.
The home occupation has to exist on the lot with the house, so you would need to replat them into one. And there is, of course, cost with that,
Right.
just so we're upfront on. It's not necessarily the cheapest of process to replat, and Tammy can tell you more about replatting, but it's usually.
But rezoning also costs money?
Yes.
Yes.
So, things are expensive.
Okay. Any other questions for us?
Nope, I appreciate your time.
So unfortunately, planning and zoning is kind of swirly. Unfortunately. But it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have we given you enough time, Brian? All right. Well, we'll bring this back up then.
All right, well, thanks for working with this, on this. What I'll explain what Tammy's handing out. It's not quite exactly what we had talked about as far as the zoning or the phasing. What she was able to help me out with was print out the pages that had the actual lot footage on it. So we marked every lot in that area that we talked about that would meet the R1 requirements of the lot widths as R1. And that included an area that we hadn't previously identified over here on the east side north of the farm. So I think there's a balance that would probably be the approximate number there of what we could do. So, yeah. So when it comes through with the zoning, this is what I would, when I come back, if you would conditionally approve with this addendum,
Yep.
if you will, that's what we would look at. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I've totally spaced this off, is, and this is a caveat, this isn't a fix-all, end-all type of deal. So for example, like in Sioux Falls, they have 5-foot side yard requirements in all their zoning or minimums. So like in our neighborhoods, our covenants are always usually 7 feet on each side. That would be our intent with this also, but once again, it's not an ordinance, but I just want to put that out there. Our intent is to have 7 foot on all of the larger lots that are not the 50-foot wide ones.
Is everybody up here okay with what he just handed us? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So do I need a motion to approve this?
Yes, the revised D1
Okay.
exhibit.
So I would
The
entertain a,
preliminary you'd be approving the preliminary plans with the revised D1. And would you be willing to get us a
Yes.
revised D1 finalized
Yes.
Monday?
Yep.
Or
so does
Tuesday.
somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the city council to approve preliminary plat based on the revised exhibit D1.
Perfect.
I'll second
So
it.
this is a formal approval, it's not a recommendation.
Oh, it is.
You
Yes.
approve
We
that city
approve the
council
preliminary
approves
plans.
that.
All right.
Yep.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second to approve the preliminary plans with the revisions. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
working with us.
Great teamwork. Love it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Having no other agenda items, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:33.